So I just want to actually mention right off the bat that Taylor Kitsch played an excellent David Koresh. Koresh, which is the last sound, a person's breath, the last breath, the sound that it makes. Koresh. So he did, someone said comically, he played it comically, so he was so good he was actually comically, and I don't know. I mean, I think he actually played him dead on, and just as, in a way, this is David Koresh's crowning achievement. I mean, I don't know if he would have known. This was a sympathetic portrait. It humanizes all of them. He is not a perfect man. He's actually far from it. And his scheme was pretty diabolical. So, a lot of times when you see two people interact with each other, it's hard to determine who's in the right, who's in the wrong. And I think really who started it is a huge thing. So when Koresh says that he'll meet the ATF at the door, and it is on the ATF to say, I'm here for this reason, and we have this reason. So, but they didn't do that. They just came in with guns blazing. And then they were in this situation. So the ATF initially fucked it up, and then the FBI finished fucking it up. After a 51-day standoff, they're doing all this psychological warfare, trying to negotiate, not really getting anywhere. Then they kill 25 children. They murder 25 children in a gas chamber, just like Nazi Germany. Sprayed gas into the vault where the kids were. 25 kids dead. More kids died in Waco than what died in Florida. And yet, I mean, this is generally a right-wing thing. But I see, for the most part, let's assume he's the bad guy. Okay? Well, then you take him while he's jogging. The sheriff didn't have a gun. The sheriff talked to him all the time. So if there was an issue, they could have just, probably gone up to his house and arrested him. But instead of arresting the main culprit that they're all worried about, they, came in guns blazing. So just attacked the whole thing as if this, 100 Christians, their whole point, the whole thing that they were doing there was stockpiling all this ammunition and all these arms for the days that the armies of Babylon finally invade. So was it Mockham's razor, razor's I forget the term, but what it essentially means is the simplest explanation is usually correct. So the appendix G of the Treasury Department reported on Waco suggests another more disturbing motive for the raid. The appendix entitled Brief History of Federal Firearms Enforcement contains the following statement. In a larger sense, however, the raid fit within a historic, well-established and well-defended government interest in prohibiting and breaking up all organized groups that sought to arm or fortify themselves. From its earliest formation, the federal government has actively suppressed any effort by disgruntled or rebellious citizen to coalesce into an armed group, however small the group, petty its complaint, or grandiose its ambition. That's what it was guilty. It had a shit ton of weapons in a building. They didn't know what the hell was going on. They heard some weird stuff was going on in there. And even though they had no evidence, they basically just threw everything that they could throw at Koresh. First, it was about meth. Look at all these meth heads. And the evidence for meth was they had some kind of heat signal. And they saw that there was one area where there was some heat. And so that's a meth thing. Another piece of evidence they had mentioned was two of them had previous drug records. So yeah, the war on drugs, they wanted to get all that military equipment from the war on drugs, so of course they had to tie meth into it. And then there was weapons. They said something about they had illegal weapons even though they didn't have any evidence of it. In fact, Koresh claims he had he had all the paperwork. So yeah, stockpiling weapons. That's the obvious, I think, to me, the obvious reason why the government, the ATF, was worried about the Koresh and the Branch Davidians, these 100 folks in this building in the middle of nowhere. What the hell are you Christians doing? Y'all praying? And y'all, what are you doing out here? What are you doing with all them guns? Wait, you got a grenade? It actually started off with UPS or USPS, the Postal Service, had found. They dropped the package. Yeah, dropped it, I'm sure. And then it opened, and they saw grenades in it, and then they alerted the authorities. Then the authorities did this and that, and, you know, killed a bunch of children. So, essentially, if some federal official doesn't like your politics, think you have too many weapons, you'll be exterminated, whether or not you're breaking the law. Steve Holbrook, an attorney in Washington, D.C., says in gun-related offenses he practices, the probable cause did not exist. The evidence of a large quantity of legal firearms and parts, including interchangeable parts. Nowhere in the affidavit is it said that all necessary parts and materials to convert semi-automatic weapons into machine guns were obtained by Koresh. Absent a no-knock warrant, U.S. Law Title 18 U.S.C. 3109 states that an officer must give notice of his legal authority and purpose before attempting to enter the premises to be searched. Only if admittance is refused after giving such notice is it legal for an officer to use force to gain entry. Said one former ATF official, irrespective of the situation inside, the notice of authority and purpose must be given unless the occupants of a dwelling are made aware that the persons attempting to enter have legal authority and a legal warrant to enter. The occupants have every right to defend themselves. Dick DeGuerin, a well-known Houston lawyer, put it more bluntly: if a warrant is being unlawfully executed by the use of excessive force, you or I or anybody else has a right to resist that unlawful force. If somebody's trying to kill you, even under the excuse that they have a warrant, you have a right to defend yourself with deadly force and to kill that person. It appears that the ATF never intended to serve the warrant in a lawful manner. They had been practicing the raid. ATF agents told the Houston Post before the raid they practiced it to where it took 7 seconds to gather tarp-covered cattle trailers and 12 seconds to get to the front door. So 7 seconds, 12 seconds, it seems like it's too much time. Why 20 seconds to get out of a vehicle and up into the door? I don't know. It is absurd to imagine that after such a mad dash to the door, the ATF agents intended to stop, knock, calmly state their legal authority and purpose, demand entry, and then wait for a response, all before taking further action. And I bet you if they would have done that, they would have been able to get into the building. They would have been able to get into the building. David Koresh, I think that's like the main scene where he comes out with his hands are up. There's women and children in here. I think that's accurate, how they portrayed it. And it has the same sort of force of Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane is usually a number. It tops the list of the greatest movies ever. It's not really that great of a movie, but it's about William Randolph Hearst. And so I think what it actually does is it shows that a biopic, a good biopic, can actually characterize the individual better than all the newspapers and writings in the world. And this, I don't know, you can't get any, but I saw one where it was cited towards the ATF in Waco or the FBI, and they made it sound so solemn. And they made the Branch Davidians, the like old grandmas were like, out, you know, they're all ready. It was an ambush. That's another thing. The ATF comes in like, you know, 2 cattle trailers in like a 70 vehicle convoy, and they want to say that we were ambushed, man. We were ambushed. What? You drove out in the middle of the country, in the middle of the rural area, to go after this one building. And you were the one who was ambushed. That's not what do you mean that's not an ambush? If anything, they were, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess ambush is like you stay off to the side, and then when they were driving by, you would ambush them. Bushwhackers would be up in the trees. But to say ambush, that seems like that's just it's a military operation, and then that would be what a military post would do if they, so it just seems like kind of a natural defense, and that's how, it was a great miniseries. I enjoyed it a lot. I actually have read a lot more about this, and I know more about this than what I knew before. I remember Bill Hicks went out there in Waco, and he was like, this thing's going on, and look what's up, and he totally, saw it as one-sided. And Alex Jones was out there too, so Alex Jones was, probably the biggest mouthpiece for all these new militias that started up in the 90s. And so, I mean, when it come to Clinton doing the assault rifles ban, when it come to the Brady bill, when it came to the chemical warfare thing, and then there was War 2 in Kosovo and Somalia. But there's something else I was thinking. But in Waco, right? So you got this Waco thing. So when the way the decision had gone down was the ATF, the Steve Higgins, and then I don't know if he was the actual commander on the field, on the scene, on the ground, but he was the main ATF to begin with. And then you had the FBI come in and then sort of, wrestle it from you already fucked it up, right? So then they walked away. And then the FBI is just tired of waiting. They take it to Janet Reno. Janet Reno says, I'll take it to the president. Bill Clinton gives it the okay. And then they spray CS gas. The idea was to spray this tear gas into the building. Then the kids' eyes would start crying, and then they would all come out. Because how could any parent ever take their kids crying and, there was no gas mask. They knew that there's no gas mask that fit children. And so, therefore, when they went in there, when they knew that piece of knowledge, that little tidbit, that little factoid was sort of the go-ahead. So, Janet Reno, Bill Clinton both heard that they were going to spray CS gas, which some people say is a chemical weapon, which I think it might be too much to say it is a chemical weapon. But they still use it with riot police and shit like that. So, it's like somewhat tolerable. I mean, it makes your eyes cry and shit, but it was banned in a 93 thing. So that started the signature thing at UN, United Nations. So I don't know. I think I could go on the fence whether or not it's not like sarin gas or mustard gas. But I don't know. With marijuana, that's a Schedule 1 narcotic, so fuck it. That's a Schedule 1 chemical weapon, right? CS gas, that's the Geneva Conventions. It's a war crime. You're breaking a war. And it killed them. It killed all the kids. And they said that there was mercy killings, and then they said that there was a kid that was stabbed. And then they also said that they started the fire, that they was planning the mass suicide. And this is just kind of propaganda 101. They just fucking dump all this. They were dumping all this shit during the siege. The only thing, I remember this, I'm 11 years old at the time. So all I remember was a building being on fire. And then that was it. And then I remember Sarah Schoenman had told me at CMZ, Crittenden Mount Zion, Grant County, Kentucky, well, what do you, first she said, why you, I just heard about it, and then I didn't make an immediate, like, oh my God, that's outrageous. She's like, he was pretending he was Jesus. And I was like, well, I don't know. And then she's like, what are you, some sort of atheist? So I got hit with two real, snotty comments. The first one was, he's Jesus. He never said the Messiah. He said he was a messenger of Jesus. So he never said he was Jesus. And a lot of Christians, you're supposed to live like Jesus. So you're supposed to live in his, his spirit or whatever. So I think that was propaganda. That was bullshit. And then Tim McVeigh, right? Tim McVeigh wound up doing a response to Waco. And his response was actually, he killed less children. I mean, he killed 168 people. 98 of them were federal agents. But if you just, reversed the accusations. So if you just said, well, those federal agents were abusing those kids. They were abusing those kids. They were molesting the kids. They were, what else? Meth. They had meth. They had weapons. They had, So if I was to say, if in defense, this is just how, you just throw everything until something sticks, right? So if you were to use the same shit they were throwing at the Branch Davidians to the federal agents at Oklahoma City, essentially they were a cult, and they had a suicide pact, and you could have got out, but they didn't. And you know what? They set the own fire. They set the fires. They shot themselves. There wasn't, then there was, they didn't show any gunshots at the end. So I heard that there were, either gunshots, and they wouldn't say whether or not the people shot themselves in a mercy killing or whether the FBI had killed them all. So there are still questions, but I do feel like the initial thing, the ATF coming up like that, and then him saying that I'll meet you at the door every time, did look normal, and they didn't put his message out, and then the media started mocking him immediately when the whole deal was to put the message out so that people could hear it and then bring it back, and then he's working on the manuscript. So, let's see. I forgot what I was looking for. But I guess I was just comparing and contrast. I was going to put it in historical perspective too. So essentially, this lawyer is saying that, the authorities have, the onus is on the authorities, and it probably could just be a quick, 2-second speech. Hey, Mr. Koresh, we have a warrant here to serve you. We're going to do this with this. He come out with his hands up. He wasn't armed whatsoever. As soon as they came up, they're shooting dogs. I heard they launched grenades, and they had incendiary devices. So they threw explosive munitions into the building. They had reported that. So the CS gas has been known to catch on fire previous times, or tear gas. I don't know if it was a CS gas, but tear gas, that's what they said in the series. So I guess I'll just finish this paragraph. It appears that the ATF never intended to serve the warrant in a lawful manner, of course, right? They practice this shit. And the Sunday morning, February 28th, isn't that perfect? Sunday. Oh, they're all going to be praying and shit, right? February 28th, 1993, 100 federal agents arrived at Mount Carmel in cattle cars and helicopters. It's not a little overkill, is it? About 30 agents dressed in black commando uniforms and armed with machine guns stormed the complex. According to the Associated Press report, witnesses said the law officers stormed the compound's main home, throwing concussion grenades and screaming, "Come out," while 3 National Guard helicopters approached. They threw grenades. They shot the dogs. They're the ones that came there. They were coming to invade the damn thing. That's what the whole thing was. You don't have 70, different vehicles and 100 federal agents and then black commando troops coming out of cattle cars and 3 National Guard helicopters without expecting some firepower back. So they were, God, they let their speculation and their imagination just absolutely run wild with them. And there's a million ways he goes jogging. They could have just caught him while he's out jogging. So, I guess the final thing I'll say is what? The ATF, I feel like that because of the initial thing, the final thing that I'll say is this, actually. So, while it was sympathetic and it humanized everybody. It humanized everybody there. So, David Koresh Kitsch played him wonderfully, and that where he's sitting there rocking out, I thought was pretty badass. So, basically, for 51 days, they were in a starving situation, and they held out, until they, killed them all. And what the fuck? Like, that's the fact that Bill Clinton gives the okay. Yeah, go ahead. Spray all them tear gas with tanks into the fucking thing. And then, the kids didn't come out. The kids didn't come out. And then, the defense of Koresh. So let's assume the absolute worst. Right? Let's assume everything and anything, all right, every bit of it was true. He's the worst guy in the entire world. It's 25, he's a polygamist. There's 31 women in there. There's 25 kids, and then there's the rest are a bunch of men. So you have, 70, 60 people in this building. He's the main culprit. He's the bad guy. Does that mean you go in there and you kill everybody? Because you got one bad person, so everybody has to die? I mean, what if they're being cursed? What if they're being, they're just under his spell, his charismatic spell? There was a time or a moment when he said that they were all his kids, the 25 kids that were in there. So he was actually planning on 24 elders. He wanted to have enough kids for 24 elders. So that's essentially the argument. Assume all. I'm sure the worst isn't true, but I'm sure he's not, perfect either, so somewhere between. And so, but if you assume the worst, assume the absolute worst. He was, a sick, weird fuck, and he was abusing the kids, polygamist, he had all the, methamphetamine, he had all the guns in the world, the automatic weapons, he was preparing for a big-ass assault, all of it. I guess that was the thing that really stuck with me all these years, was that if they alleged that the kids were being beaten and molested, and yet the way that they save these kids that are victims of oppression and injustice, perversion, is to kill them. Slaughter them all. They all died. So that's what the fuck? You didn't save any of the kids. You didn't save anybody. You hurt everybody. Everybody died. Everybody died. And you don't fuck up a situation where everybody dies to push for a mass suicide. The survivors don't believe that happened. And why would, I do believe the survivors. It made sense. The series made sense. So I believe mostly the survivors, they are all a bunch of bullshit. Of course they don't want to fucking tell the truth. I mean, every bit of it, the way that they talk, the way that they lie, and then they just lie on top of lie, and like, you can't even fucking tell what's true, what's not true. That's why you need, honest people in government. Now, I guess they got some reason to lie. I guess both sides have reason to lie. But the ATF definitely botched it up. They fucked it up first, and then the FBI finished fucking it up. And, right, I already made the defense, basically, so I guess that'll be it. What else is there to talk about? 70 ATF agents, BDs, February 28th, a mile-long convoy, cattle trailer, 2 of them, one in the front, one in the back. It was weird. I guess I'll talk about this later, but the men would let David fuck their wives. He stopped having sex once it started to feel good. He didn't want to give in to his lustful, carnal desires of the flesh. So, Kitsch is comically accurate with Koresh. For an acting gig, he played it well. He played it well. And, I think that this is I have more to say about this, but, it's a good series. Y'all should go check out. If you haven't seen Waco, you should go check it out. All right. Peace.